Okay, what up ladies and gents, it's your favorite Asian robot right here. Hopefully your favorite First Descendant content creator, official content creator. And I'm here today with a little bit of guidance on weapon stats and how to mod, alright? So this is the weapon guide that you guys have been asking for. This is a basic guide intended for free-to-play players as well as those who are starting out in the game. You want to know how to assess your weapons, how to know what each weapon can do, why certain weapons are good. Alright, I'm going to teach you all about those weapon stats right now. I'm going to try and make this brief but informative. All right, so pay attention to what I say. Vid is fully timestamped as always, so enjoy. All right, and for those of you that have not yet chosen a content creator, be sure to register me as your content creator. Okay, before we get into it, link is in the video description. It is free to register. All right, I'm trying to get into the top 5 creators and I need your help and your support to do so. All right, so counting on you. All right, let's get into the video now. Whenever you look at any weapon, all right, whenever you look at any weapon, let's say you go into your weapons inventory right now, and when you select or hover over a weapon, say like, I'm not quite sure how it looks on console. I'm a total PC player from day one. All right, whenever I hover over each of these weapons or select them or whatever, you'll see a variety of options like equip, module settings, junk, register attached items, change skin, details, all that kind of stuff. Okay, you want to go into details. When you go into details, you will see a screen that looks very much like this, okay? Here, you can see all the different factors of the weapon, how long it takes to reload, its attack, fire rate, rounds per magazine, etc., so on and so forth, okay? I'm going to tell you what to look at in terms of the most important stats. When you are new to the game, don't worry about crit hit rate and crit hit damage, all right? Because you don't really have the mod capacity to really gear into this. I will be at an advanced stage, probably a couple of weeks after this video. When I've started to really get all my catalysts and energy activators and stuff like that and start to work on the ultimate weapons, I'll probably do something comparing critical hit rate and weak point damage, because doing this free to play, it's going to take me some time to really get to the level where I can assess that, especially on weapons. But quite frankly, the main thing that you need to understand is that for the most part, when you're in that free to play stage and working on your descendants, you'll be only focusing on weak point damage. Weak point damage acts as a straight up multiplier that applies whenever you're hitting a weak point, and you can discover the enemy's weak points by using your receive scan. All right, scan an enemy that you haven't met before, find out the weak point, shoot for it. Most of the time it's the head, so nothing too difficult about that. All right, attribute status effect trigger rate. This indicates the status effect trigger rate for the attribute attack when firing a weapon. If there is no attribute attack, no status effect is inflicted. What does this mean? Whenever you add toxic, burn, chill, whatever, right? Whether or not the effect is triggered on the enemy is dependent upon this rate. Each weapon has its own rate for triggering. It's on a per shot fired basis. So every shot fired by this has a 25% chance of triggering the attribute status effect, okay? FYI, this can be increased by the weapon's options. So if the weapon has an option that says attribute attack chance up by 38%, this percentage chance will increase by a portion of that, okay? You've also got the damage type of the weapon. Now, this is only important for Colossus fights. Why? Because in the field, you're not going to specifically counter every single type of enemy, all right? Take note that it says, if you hover over this, attacking with a damage type inferior to the opponent's damage does not decrease damage, okay? You will always deal at least 100% damage to your opponent. That being said, all right, if you have a superior damage type, you will deal 10% more. So crush beats burst, all right? Pierce beats crush, and then burst beats pierce. So just take note of that. Okay. Crit rate and crit damage. This one, you will have to assess it on a mathematical basis. I will show you that in future when comparing to your weak point damage. Just take note that weak point damage is far more important for the most part, okay? So once you get an understanding of the weapon stats, there's one last thing we have to talk about, okay? If we scroll down here, the hip fire accuracy shows how accurate this weapon is when you don't aim down the sights, okay? Lower number, bad, higher number, good. For most of the scout rifles, your aim shot accuracy is 100%. It will go directly on target. Your hip fire is atrocious. But for example, the Silly Weeper can actually be used almost like a close range shotgun, where this spread is not going to matter. The hip fire accuracy, or both accuracies actually, affect how spread out the crosshair looks when you either aim down sights or when you're just hip firing. All right. If you see your crosshair is very spread out, it means that the accuracy is very low. All right. Attempting to increase this through mods like Hawkeye or whatever applies the percentage increase to this value. So for example, if I were to increase my hip fire accuracy by 10%, I'd get a value of 2 more. So it's not really going to change much. If the hip fire accuracy is already pretty high, like 70, 80, then adding accuracy will help you a lot. But you literally don't need to add accuracy for guns like this. All right. Effective range, drop off start, drop off end. Okay. And then the drop off modifier. These indicate what kind of range you can fire this gun at. At 40 meters, your damage will start to drop off from 100% all the way down to 60% and it plateaus there. So if you're trying to fire at a target that is more than 70 meters away from you, and quite frankly, 70 meters in this game is really, really far, all right, you will deal 60% of your normal damage. The maximum range that this can hit at is 150 meters, all right? And at anything between 70 meters to 150 meters, you will just simply deal 0.6% damage. Sorry, 0.6 times meaning 60% damage. Sorry, have to calculate that. So you don't have, like, between 40 to 70, it just gradually drops down from 100% down to whatever. So ideally, you want to use this around 40 meters of range in game. The problem is that in this game, I have found no way of actually telling the range. So if you guys have found a way to actually measure the range, because I went into the training facility, I went into all these things, I couldn't tell the range at all. So I have a rough guesstimate of how much it is based on Azastra's devotion, which I was working on, but I have no idea of the actual range, so I do apologize for that. Otherwise, I would have shown you what 40 meters looks like. But either way, all right, just do take note of these values, because if you see your damage decreasing at a certain range and you felt like your gun was stronger and it suddenly feels weaker, you're probably hitting the max range and you're dealing with drop off, okay? All right, last but not least is movement speed, sprint speed. These actually do have effects. So if you have this gun equipped in your hands, you will be running at whatever speed is shown here. The higher the value, the better. All right. So if we were to look at, say, a handgun like the Red Wolf, this thing has a much higher sprint speed. So let's say you have a handgun in your hands, you will run way faster. All right. You will even move at, normally moving, you'll even be faster. So take into account movement speed as well, because this can affect your mobility in boss fights, things like that. What you use in those fights will affect you. So just taking a look at Azastra's Devotion. This one has the 800 sprint speed and a fairly decent movement speed. So if you really need to evade attacks, this is probably what you'll be using. If you need something heavy, all right, to deal with enemies, look at this. The Tamer can sprint pretty well, but its base movement speed very low. Okay, so these are some factors that you have to think about whenever you assess each gun. All right, what I personally always look at is whenever I bring up a gun, I take a look at the weak point damage. I don't worry about the crit rate because I can't really affect it right now as a beginner, as a free to play. So I look at the weak point damage. Okay, low. But there's a trick to this, which I'll show you in the modding section, which is coming up next. So then the next thing I take into account is damage drop off. Okay, how much is the drop off? I lose up to 45% of my damage. Okay, so I better stay within range. Range, however, Tamer actually has pretty good range. 35 meters. Okay, satisfied. I will use it about that range to brutally destroy my opponents. Accuracy, can I affect it very much? Not really, because even if I were to take 10% of the aim shot accuracy, that's an increase of 4. If I were to do the hip fire accuracy, that's an increase of roughly 4 as well. I guess I could put in a little accuracy to help me out, but nothing beyond that, okay? So I always take a look at these values. Then last but not least, the movement speed, okay? Once I've taken into account the movement speed, I just have a look at it and I say, okay, that's enough. The attribute status effect trigger rate, I also don't worry about too much, because on rapid fire guns, you will actually trigger this quite often. Simply because you're firing so many bullets at the enemy that this is likely to happen. Okay? So that's what I do in general. Once you have done all that and had a look at everything and you understand, okay, so I know which weapon I want to use, how do you mod that weapon? Okay, let's take the Tamer right now, right? We'll go into the third setting page. Okay, so when I'm in the mod section, you can bring up the stats by pressing the, well, on PC it's tab, but I'm sure there'll be a button down there for you on console. you bring up the stats, right? And you can start to see the effects of every stat. For me, my standard F2P build, because you only have like 48, well, you have between 48 to 49 module capacity. Excuse me. This depends almost entirely on your mastery rank. All right, most of this is going to come from your mastery rank, so I wouldn't worry about it otherwise. So on this weapon, I'm like, okay, so I've got 40. I don't know why it says 49 because I planned this video around 48, but I must have gotten one somewhere. Either way, okay, let's say I plan this around 48 points. So I start with rifling reinforcement. This will take 16 points at max. This is one of the most crucial things. It buffs your base firearm attack. So we save that. We now see the newly buffed firearm attack. The next thing that I always add is weak point sight. Why weak point sight? Take note of the weak point damage before and after. Before this, I deal 1 times damage. But this thing acts as a straight multiplier. So it says plus 30% weak point damage. That means that every time I hit the weak point, I'm dealing 1.3 times damage. Right there. You can see that right there. You can see the change that just happened. Okay. Weak point damage is now 1.305, up from the previous 1 times. So weak point damage is generally something I always have. Now, you can have this at 15 points or 16 points, depends on all the other mods you're going to use. Up to you. Okay. Excuse me. Now, the Tamer has a pretty high fire rate. So I do like stuff. Now, the rest of the points you can sort of play around with freely. But before I add anything else like slow art and all that kind of stuff, what I'll usually add is the element to counter the enemy. Now, how many ranks do you need in your elemental enhancement? Okay. For void intercept battles, I try to have it as high as possible to really take advantage of the elemental weakness. That being said, in the field or for general combat, you can't really do that. So I like to have 2 enchantments, one which is as close to max as possible for the void intercepts, and one that is about rank 5. Rank 5 gives you the most bang for your mod capacity. So it's still going to cost you about 11 points. That's a pretty penny. So here, let's say I want to go and fight something, I don't know. Let's say I want to go fight something that has toxic. So I need toxic, right? Sorry, let's say I want to fight something that's electric, so I need toxic. So here you go. I'll add that in. This is what the beginner builds look like. All right, these 3 factors are all you will need. After that, whatever spare capacity you have, spend it as you wish. All right. So in my personal opinion, I usually will pick something like, okay, so I can choose to increase like base fire rate. So if I have got another copy of slow art, I'll add it in. Now, I didn't have another copy of slow art, unfortunately. So I haven't been able to add it in. I plan on refarming it. But there's other, excuse me, there are other mods that you can add in. You can also add in, I think it's sharpshooter. Let me just check that I have that. Yeah. You can choose to add in sharpshooter as well. Spend your 7 points like that. Gives you firearm attack at 9. For the rapid fire stuff, I very much prefer slow art because it does so much more damage. But you can add in whatever other item you want. The choice is yours. It's just up to you how you spend the remaining module capacity. But these 3 are your big 3 crucial ones for when you're dealing with most things. Having the elemental attribute is useful because that is literally a straight increase of your damage. The 15% is just on whatever your firearm attack is. So this feeds off your firearm attack, which adds an element to whatever you're doing. So you will just have additional damage coming in from this. Okay. And yeah, so this would be a setup for, just as an example, for the Tamer. There's literally nothing else much that you can do. I mean, you've got 7 points. You can put in what you want. You can have another like marksman or things like that. But I urge you to take into account the Tamer has a fairly decent crit rate. But even with crit rate, right? Just to show you an example of this, let's say I add this in, right? Take note, it's not adding another 8% crit chance. No, it's adding a 0.8. Why? Because it's plus 8% of the 10% base. Okay? So this is why crits are not very worth it in the early part of the game. You have to really build around it, and the weapon itself needs to have a high base crit. If the weapon itself has a high base crit, you can add quite a bit of critical chance to it, therefore making most of your attacks critical, and therefore giving you a high enough multiplier for it to overcome weak spot damage in some weapons. But when you're F2P and your mod capacity is limited to this, you don't have a lot of options. So usually the big 3 is good enough. It is the simplest and most basic way on pretty much any weapon to multiply the kind of damage that you can do. And it only takes 3 mods. So you don't have to think too much about it. I know there's a lot of extra mod slots, but these you can fill up with like when you have more crystallization catalysts, things like that. Or if you find a gun you really like, you want to put in an energy activator, you can do the same. All right, but you don't have to like do it now. Early game, this is good enough. Okay, early, mid game, this is good enough. In fact, right now I'm at end game and I'm still using like this kind of setup. In fact, my setup for let's just exit without saving. My current setup for this looks something like that. I've got weak point aiming for a slight increase in accuracy. All right, but it's really not necessary because even if I don't use that, I'm not losing too much accuracy value. The gains are less than 10%, obviously, so no real need for me to do that, you know. But I can if I want to. I can if I want to. It's however you want to play with the points that you have remaining is however you structure this. Ideally, if I could farm another copy of Slow Art, which I probably will, then I'll probably slam it in here and have a ball with that because that would be the ideal. Okay, so that about covers not only the weapon stats, but the basic modding of these weapons. This is pretty much all you need. You can adjust it. You can throw in a few things. I experimented so much when I was much early on in the game, but I've come to realize that once you get closer to the end game, these three are the only things that matter. So I've just been running around with this, and it has worked perfectly. All I have to do is just aim at the head. Enemies usually die. So yeah, this has not been a problem for me. If you guys have any better suggestions, you know, please feel free to let me know. But remember, you've only got 48 mod capacity, so you don't really have a lot of choices, and that unfortunately is how the game goes. You have to adjust for it. There's just no way around it. So yeah, that is what I would do. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you guys have found it informative. I hope you guys have understood a little more about modding these weapons, why you don't need a lot of mods, and of course, I hope you've understood more about the weapon stats and how they apply to each weapon and why they matter, okay? Thank you very much for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And before we go, we always thank, now, whenever I have time to film a proper video, we always thank not only the top supporters, but the top channel members. Okay, so I'm going to do that right now. Let me start with... Okay, July's top supporters. Now, top supporters this month are Salem, okay, as our top super chatter. Our top super chatter list includes Don Magix, John McKinley, Arcane Silver, Crixus, Mr. X, Princess Star, i3XO, and Iron SBO. Thank you guys so much. Our top channel membership gifter is i3XO, and our top channel membership gifter list includes LGS Immortal and Track Hoodie. Thank you so much. Now, for our top channel members, let me see. And by the way, excuse the coughing. You know, going hard on this, so no time to sit and recover. Okay, our top channel members are at the Only Fan level: Nisk, Kyle, i3XO, and BVS Fang. The Only Fan is what we call our top membership on this channel, so it's not an OnlyFans. Okay, that's illegal in Singapore, unfortunately. Okay, and our Plus Ultra members are Arcane Silver and Death Dawning 982. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to register your support, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Okay? I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. And if you got any questions to ask about the basics on weapons, let me know. Unfortunately, not much mod capacity, so not much we can do. But hey, this will get you through most things, alright? Catch you later.